Hello there, Ricky Tang here, and just showing you the dash here. I'm just about to take out the Aprilia Tuono 660, which I'm really quite looking forward to. By all accounts, the weather's going to change in an hour or two, so I think the first thing I'm going to do is stop and take some photos of the bike before the sun goes in, before it gets a bit overcast. And then we'll go for a little bit of a razz and see what the bike's like. I, of course, have taken this bike courtesy of the great folks at Fraser the Gloucester. Thank you, James Heslop, for getting this arranged. And he tells me that it's actually quite hard to get stock of, well, many bikes generally speaking, but he's actually got this bike in stock in all three available colours. I'm in the dynamic throttle mode at the moment. Just as you pull the throttle on, there is a nice sensation of torque. It doesn't quite last as you keep winding the throttle on. It isn't as quite as brisk as the initial sensation would imply, but it's better than not having it all, so could be worse. As the revs rise, this engine does feel quite thrummy. There's a fair bit of vibration coming through the tank and the pegs and the seat, more than I recall from the RS 660, but it just might be because of the low miles on this bike. I've not heard any other reports, I don't think, specifically calling this bike out for being especially prone to vibration. Now, I was half expecting, before I got onto this bike, for the riding position to be, with my back to be upright. Now, it is pretty upright, but to be honest with you, there is a good, maybe, I don't know, nearly 10 degrees of forward lean for my back. It's not a lot, but I'm not bolt upright. If I had longer arms, I would be bolt upright. But for me, at 5'7", or 170 centimetres, there's a slight forward lean to it. It's just not uncomfortable. It's just a remark. Alright, what's this steering lot like? Ooh. Decent. Not too generous, but more than acceptable. Will do the job in town, I think. You'll wish you're maybe just a couple of degrees more, but yeah, not a biggie, not a problem. So what can I tell you now at these slow, kind of urban speeds? The clutch, it is a cable clutch, not hydraulic, but it's reasonably light, unless you have rather small or weak hands. Then in the general scheme of things, don't think I'll have any trouble. I'm in this dynamic throttle mode, and let's have a look at what the kind of on-off transition's like. Roll off, roll on, roll off, roll on, roll off. The bumpy road isn't helping. Let's try that again. That's commendable. Yeah, that's actually pretty good rolling on there. Just tickling along here in first with no throttle, 7 miles an hour. It's kind of a tick over speed in first gear. Mirrors are decent. I can see about maybe 20% elbows, but it's mostly a good view out the back. Going back to the throttle, this sort of slow speed stuff, up and down speed ramps, probably not the best place to use dynamic throttle mode, so I'll switch it over to commute. Yeah, a little bit smoother coming on and off the throttle there. What a time to be alive. Be able to change how a motorbike acts at a touch of a button. Obviously there's a place for simple bikes with no electronics, but I do like motorbikes that can change their character, flick of a switch if you want them to. I think I'll have no trouble getting my feet down with my 32-inch inside leg. Yeah, just about. Got my heels down, just. So if your legs are a bit shorter, you'll be more on the balls of your feet. But yeah, both feet down. I might pop up the seat height now. I might talk about it later in the walk around as well. Right, here we are at super slow speed, 0 miles an hour on the clock there. Yeah, pretty nicely balanced that. Back brake at these speeds, not very powerful. You need a fair bit of a press to start scrubbing off speed here at these slow speeds. You give it half a press, you don't slow down very much. So give it a bit more squeeze, you'll be fine. Front brake's good in these slow speeds so far, not grabby. Alright, 2000 RPM, second gear. Yeah, it's a bit sleepy just as you roll it on, but not unhappy. My legs are not too tucked up behind me. In fact, they're not behind me at all, really. And the foot pegs don't feel too high either. It's a good commuting riding position, I've got to say. Okie dokie, here we are. Aprilia Tuono 660. Let's get some specs out of the way, shall we? 659cc. Parallel twin, 8 valve, water cooled. They're the very basics. I think you pretty much know all that. So let's give you the basic power and torque output. The engine's rated at 95 horsepower or 70 kilowatts at 10,500 RPM. I've got nowhere near that yet. 49.4 foot-pounds or 67 newton meters at 8,500 RPM. I don't think I've even got there yet, but it's only been about 40 minutes on the bike. The gear change is on the stiff side. I can only hope that does loosen up a little bit, because it slightly goes against the grain of this road bias that it's got. I like a stiff gear change on a sports bike, but I'm not so sure if I like it on a more road oriented machine. You can just see the shock nestled in there. So yeah, preload. Oh, can I focus? Yeah, rebound and preload. I can see preload at the bottom. Not quite sure where rebound can be found, but it's in there by all accounts. For the forks, we have preload and rebound, but just on, where's the other fork top? Just on the one side. If I remember rightly, the RS660's got it on both forks. So yeah, kind of a lower spec on the suspension side of things. But so far, yeah, I haven't got any complaints to speak of. Oh, great looking machine at the front. The LED kind of position lights there. Gorgeous. Can I get the lights on? Do I have to start the engine? I think that's a start the engine job. Am I in neutral? Yes, I am. Oh yeah, I'll have to turn off the daytime running lights, I think. There we go. That's more like it. I can see it flickering. That's not the actual bike, that's just the camera making it flicker. Main beams as well. Might not be able to tell so much. Oh, there you are. Nice. What we like out the back. Good looking lights, but I'm not a fan of the angle here. Stop bike. To me, with the seat slightly overhanging the back, I don't know, it might just be being fussy, but it's almost as if the backlight's partially hidden. Doesn't look as obvious. I mean, it does from the back. If you're in a car behind it, you're going to see the light, but I don't know, it just seems a bit overly tucked away. That's just my opinion anyway, for what it's worth. Now, unfortunately, I don't know the spec of these calipers. I wouldn't like to guesstimate,
but they are biting on nice big 320mm discs, which is very nice. Oh, and I do know we've got a radial master cylinder, so once I get it to some more exciting speeds, braking power should be pretty darn good. Rear disc 220mm, little disc there with again another Brembo caliper. In terms of the toys that you got with this bike, I said slightly lower spec than the RS660. We have got traction control, wheelie control, and engine maps, you know, commute versus dynamic versus individual mode. Let's go to individual mode actually while we're here. If I can do this without dropping the camera. There we go. So we can see the presets currently for each of the modes. Commute, engine map is on 3, which would be the softest setting. Engine brake 3, which would probably be the lowest level. Well, I don't know actually, probably the highest level engine braking. Traction control 6, wheelie control on, ABS on 3. In individual mode currently, the engine mode is on, or the throttle map is on the spiciest mode. Well, there we go, so I can get over there and mess about with that. Engine brake, yeah, we can play with that. I'll leave it on 2. Traction control, I'm not going to mess about with, but I will. Oh, hello. That's something I think I remember. Sorry, get over there. I think it's baked into traction control, so if I turn off traction control, yeah, so unlike the RS660, you can't turn off the wheelie control separately to traction. It's either on all the traction control settings, or you turn traction off and it turns wheelie control off. Bit of a shame, bit measly compared to the RS660, considering this is not a lot cheaper. I'll turn it off, you know, we haven't got a huge amount of power, the roads are currently dry. I'll have a little play of individual mode shortly. But we do have cruise control though, which is quite nice. Pirelli Rosso Corsa 2s. 180 55 17 and 120 70 ZR 17, both ZR rated tyres. Steering rate 24.1 degrees, trail 104.7, wheelbase 1370. That's quite a tight wheelbase, isn't it? I think should be fun throwing it around the bends later on. 820mm seat height, and like I said, I've got both my feet on the ground, almost got the heels down, so yeah, pretty comfortable in terms of standing over the bike and holding it upright. Now weight, unfortunately my little spec sheet is a bit vague. It says dry weight in the left hand column and it says 183 kilos curb, which is wet weight, so I'll confirm that here somewhere. I think that'll do you for now. I'm getting hotter, so let's get on the road and ride.
So now I'm at 60, pretty much for the first time today. Yeah, the suspension is a bit on the stiff side, but preload and rebounder there for you to play with, so it might be able to make it a bit more pliable if you ride over a lot of kind of rough roads. And in the UK you probably will be riding over rough roads. Yeah, I just wound the throttle on there for about 5,000 RPM, and I think somewhat like the RS660, it's a little flat in the middle. I think it just depends on where you catch it when you want the acceleration. If I caught it at 4,000 RPM, it seems to kind of push on through. But maybe if you catch it around about 5.5, it's not quite so keen to accelerate. Bit of a difficult one to explain, but as I just pulled away there, you know, you use the revs, you're revving through the range as you go through the gears, and the bike feels really good there. It's just when you're in a higher gear, kind of mid revs, and you wind it open, that's where the flatness in the throttle response can catch you out. So yeah, I can imagine some people might go, what are you talking about? There's no flat spot. I think it just depends on how you use the throttle, how you use the engine. Now the bike is lower geared than the RS660, so a bit busier sound coming from the engine, I think. What's the front brake like? Let's get down. Oh, awesome. There's a good amount of power there. So you can rely on the front brake when you need it, I think. I didn't mention the fuel capacity, did I? That's one thing I missed. 15 litres, I think, which is not very much, let's admit it. Slowing down just so I can speed up. Woo! That does give you some speed. Alright, calm it down. And it sounded great. I think it's mostly airbox, but that sounded like you were really racing along, which of course I wasn't. Wow, the bike feels, now I'm kind of leaning down a little bit, bike feels really compact. Wow, it does. It does seem to come together nicely when you start going faster. A bit like the RS660. Looks like it's happiest when it's going fast. Hasn't got an awful lot of torque, so it doesn't want to rip your head off, but accelerates quick. It does go quick. It gets up to unmentionable speeds in quite a short amount of time. Brakes are strong. As we're about to find out now. Woo! I think I got a bit of fishtailing from the back end then. So that was a good little razz through some bends, but yeah, suspension quite stiff. I think if I had more time with the bike, I'd certainly look at trying to loosen it off a little bit for my personal tastes. Just get a bit more damping compliance, hopefully. Yeah, on the initial throttle is great, but then oh, let's try that out then. So if you do that, if I do that, so I'm just playing with the throttle here. Third gear. I'm just trying to work out how it how the power comes in. And if I kind of go full throttle from here, there's a slight bulge of torque, and then it's not limited. It's not limited, but it kind of accelerates at a set rate. But if you open up the throttle progressively, still thinking. It's almost as if it accelerates harder on a progressive throttle than it does on full throttle, but I think it's a placebo. I can't imagine it really works like that. But anyway, yeah, if you're more progressive than the throttle with the throttle, rather than just trying to whack it open and wait for it to accelerate, it's more engaging that way, it's more interesting that way. So if you try and avoid hitting the throttle stops, it's basically more fun. Nice. Hello. It is lively. Doesn't seem quite as composed as the RS660 did. Yeah, suspension seems a little bit more unruly. It's a bit more boingy than the RS660 from what I recall of that ride. And when I'm bent over or leant over and kind of going through a rough bit of road, the tyres felt they were kind of scrubbing sideways a little bit, rather than kind of staying planted. It's got very, very light handling, very kind of direct steering. By that, when you give it a bit of opposite lock, if you force it, then it kind of tips in really quick. But with that lower gearing over the yumps and bumps, it did seem quite happy to go whoop. Wind blast at higher speeds, pretty darn good. It's been so good that I've actually forgot to talk about it. Yeah, it didn't attract my attention, but my helmet is really not being buffeted at all, because we all know that this is not a naked bike. We all know this. It's at minimum a half fair bike. Yeah, when you give it the B's all the way through first gear, what it reminds me of, I can't take the credit for this analogy because it was mentioned to me by James Fraser at Fraser's in Gloucester. It's quite a lot like a two-stroke. All the power seems to be stacked at the top end, which is fun. You got to keep it on the boil like a two-stroke when you are throwing it around the back lanes. And that takes a bit of recalibration of your brain if you're used to torquier bikes. Yeah, now we got a bit of a problem. If you're heeled over bumpy roads, the bike does feel quite lively. It seems like the tyres have to do a lot of work to kind of keep the bike in line. I don't think I noticed that in the RS660. Now maybe tweaking the adjusters will help, but I'm not so sure. It might be more of a basic question of suspension quality and component quality. That's maybe the issue here. Yeah, you'll just have to take that observation that I've made as I give it to you. I'm not a pro bike reviewer or pro motorcycle rider. What I can tell you is that if you hit bumpy bends when you're leant over, it feels a bit uncomfortable and not a lot of fun. Yeah, actually I'm riding into a shower. Oh, that's a shame. Hopefully I can get out the other end of this shower, but just in case I can't, I better start summing up. Criticisms. Well, there's not that many, but probably the biggest one is the suspension. Now, like I keep saying, sorry to keep repeating myself, but maybe we can make it softer by playing with the adjusters, but I'm a bit concerned that won't be enough. Certainly worthy of attention if you take your own test ride on this bike. The other thing is the engine, and I don't think, although I am kind of calling this a criticism, nothing actually wrong with the thing. Don't think it's badly mapped or anything, it's just a little flat at the lower revs, but it does sparkle at the top. It is a lot of fun if you have a chance to open that throttle up. And if the road's smooth, the handling's spot on as well. Handling's really good. if you're not encountering many bumps. And I suppose the other thing I could criticise, or it's getting wetter, is the price. I think it's £9,700. So yeah, a lot more money than things like CBR 650, Z650, but you could argue it's a better developed sporting machine than either of those. One bike that I've been reminded of recently that I rode last year, I don't think it's a direct comparison to this bike. If you're looking at one of these, you're not looking at one of those. But it's a GSX S750, and that is a really fun machine. I think, you know, it hasn't got the electronics of this bike, hasn't got the dash, hasn't got maybe the build quality even. It's built down to a budget. But on back roads, I'd argue it might be pretty much just as much fun as one of these. But I don't think anyone cares. If you're looking at this bike, you're not interested in a Suzuki GSX S750, I suspect. Now, positives. I like the riding position. The seat also, so far, I've been on the bike for about 2 hours now, and the seat's actually really good. It's quite supportive. Doesn't feel like I'm about to get a numb bum. The engine, when you get the revs right, that's also a lot of fun. And not sure if I can really label this as a positive. The engine vibrates a fair bit, but it hasn't got anything to go numb. Feels like a fair bit of character there as a result of it kind of feeling alive under you. But if you're coming up through the ranks in motorcycling, and you are looking for something a little bit special, an Italian thoroughbred, that need to be worked to get the best out of it, like Italian bikes of old did, like your dad and your granddad taught you about, then yeah, this is a very worthy machine, I think. Not perfect, but certainly worth considering. So it comes down really to the most important question of the day. Would I take the Aprilia Tuono 660 out on a second date? Well, I think I'm going to have to decline. I think I'm going to have to say no. The RS 660 I really enjoyed, and I thought, since this Tuono is more my style of bike, I thought after I rode this I'd actually consider buying one. I thought I'd be sold pretty quickly on this bike, but I think there's something with the suspension. Not sure a spanner and a screwdriver is actually going to solve. But aside from that, the RS 660 has better quality suspension, and it's already got all the electronics, you know, as standard. The riding position, since it's quite a short bike, isn't as extreme as some sports bikes. So out of the two twins, I think I'd pick the sportier one. That's not to say I've had a bad time on this bike. I haven't. But yeah, if I had the opportunity to ride either the RS or the Tuono, I'd pick the RS. So there it is. I hope you've enjoyed coming along on this ride with me, as we've discovered the pros and cons of the bike in my eyes. Look forward to seeing you in the comments. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them regarding this bike or the RS 660. And see you guys in another video.